Hey, guys, I think that we are live. I'm trying to get comfortable over here. I'm on the couch. So thank you very much for joining tonight. It's kind of a late night, 9 o'clock Eastern time. I've got a new hobby friend that I've recently come across. This dude's awesome. His name is Chris with VegasFinds777. We're going to go through all things sports cards, collectibles. We're going to go off the beaten path a little bit and talk about collectibles as a whole as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Chris on. Can you hear me, Chris?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. I know. Now, are you West Coast? You're in Vegas, right?
I am. We're in Las Vegas, yes. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, man. It's very nice to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're 3 hours behind in Vegas, or is it 2?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from the East Coast, so I like to get a discount on my friends. I'm like, hey, you got to go to bed. It's 11. I'm still over here, you know.
That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, thank you very much for coming on. Actually, I saw you on another one of my hobby friends, Brad, the comeback card investor. I saw you on last week, and I've seen a lot of your videos. I really enjoy your channel a lot.
Thank you.
So I was like, I got to get this guy on. And actually, the one thing that stuck out at me was the He-Man, the Masters of the Universe figure that you have in the background. That caught my eye a couple of months ago watching some of your videos. I'm like, this guy, he's speaking my language. He's about my age. He's definitely a guy I need to talk to. So, all right. So first off, let's kind of do the traditional type. How did you get into YouTube? And actually, did you start podcasting and all this before YouTube? How did you get to your channel where it is now? How did it all happen? What's the why? I guess you don't have to go into all of the things, but what got you into it?
Well, I've basically been teaching poker for a number of years, like 10 or 11 years, cash games. And I used to make trading videos, and people asked me to coach them. That's how I started doing that back in the day. And I've just made a bunch of content. And from there, when the lull kind of hit in the mid-2000s, I started streaming somewhere around 2012. I started streaming on Twitch TV, just role-playing games like Diablo 3, Path of Exile. I had fun doing that. And then that became a little bit more serious to where that's what I was doing for a living for a while, besides playing poker. So it just all kind of kept going, and I've always enjoyed making content, being a little bit entertaining when that's possible as well. So that's basically how it went. It went poker, Twitch TV, and then now I've just been back into the sports card hobby, and I've always flipped stuff on the side of playing poker professionally anyway. So it all hits right there in the middle for me. I really do enjoy making content and sharing whatever is going on in my crazy head with people. So yeah, it's something I'm passionate about, and it's a lot of fun.
So did you move to Vegas to be closer to kind of that poker scene, or were you already kind of doing that, anyway?
I had always played online for that, but I eventually moved from the East Coast over to the West Coast. And from the Washington State area, I basically just came down to Vegas. I met my wife. She's from Los Angeles, and I was living in Washington at the time. And we just kind of moved into together in Las Vegas. So that's how it was. I was already playing poker professionally and mostly online, but I also thought that the games live here in Vegas could be a good opportunity as well, because at that time, the online games were getting tough with the format that I play, which is the 6 max cash games. So it all just kind of worked out.
Interesting. I'm such a novice on all that stuff. I'm not even going to try to speak your language, but I'm such a novice at it. But all right. So when did you kind of, start off with poker? When did you get back into cards heavily? Now, I know you said, and I know you do all sorts of collectibles, and we'll get into all that. But when specifically did you say, okay, cards, like that's something I'm going to really focus hard on?
Well, I've always done it on the side just a little bit. So getting back in heavily, I would say, is when I had some medical issues. I had like a rare stomach condition where like twice or 3 times a year. And this also stems a little bit from smoking weed. So, hey, if you guys are all potheads out there, put the classic rock on, hit the Pink Floyd. But smoking weed will give you this, you can't keep food down, and basically I would just be stuck in the shower for like 5 hours a day. I had to be in the hospital for 2 weeks sometimes, and that'll take a lot out of your poker game, because for poker it requires a lot of mental focus, and you got to be there grinding every day. So I was just looking for other stuff to flip on the side, just as kind of side income. And we came across, like I said, I started getting into vinyl records heavily. I was already into them from a kid, and just growing up. But we started getting heavily into the vinyl records, and then on one of the buys that we went to, which stemmed from a Raiders of the Lost Ark poster, which I thought was funny. We went to buy a Raiders of the Lost Ark poster, and then from there we met a guy who was selling records, and that guy also happened to be one of the writers of the old school How to Beat Pac-Man book. I don't know if you remember that book, but it was How to Beat Pac-Man in the 80s, and it was very big at the time. And this guy was one of the writers, but he ended up having a big collection of basketball cards, which we got a good amount of money for. We ended up getting a Michael Jordan, 1986 Fleer set, 87 Fleer set, just a very robust collection. And that was before we even knew that The Last Dance had come out. I mean, that was, before that. So at that point, I was like, wow, that's awesome. We're going to have to just turn my old school passion directly into something I'm doing day to day now. So that's how we just kind of went full force with the sports cards. And then taking it from a poker player's perspective, I just started researching reasons why prices would jump, and then we started getting into the playoff bubble, and all this kind of COVID stuff happened. And, it died for like a month where we weren't getting a single sale on eBay. And then it just all exploded after everybody started getting all their unemployment funds. So it was, a nice big meeting in the middle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, did you get into, was it basketball cards that you were most interested in, or was it a variety of sports?
Well, I started off with baseball cards as a kid. I'd go to the local ice cream shop, which doubled as a baseball card shop. I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. I was into BMX bikes. I had to trade for everything that I got. If I wanted Reebok pumps, I had to go trade my friends' hand-me-down ones for some Nolan Ryans, that type of a deal. So I just kind of went from there. And basketball cards, basketball's always been my favorite sport. Basketball and hockey, growing up, baseball was it when I was a kid, but it got a little bit tedious to watch. You got seeing a guy stand there and then he throws a pitch. So, I mean, I didn't watch TV that much for a long time. I put all my time into poker. And when I did, I had something on the side. I'd have like 3 monitors with poker tables all in the middle. And the other monitor would basically be information or nonsense. And then one would just be whatever I was watching. So basketball and hockey were it for me. So, of course, you want to get into those basketball and hockey cards at that point. Probably one of the only people that really is into hockey cards, honestly.
I remember my parents, and I grew up a very, very middle class family. It was, Asics were like the shoe. I had like a plain white shoe. I remember when the Reebok pumps came out and there was all the commercials and everything, and talking to my parents about those, and it was like, no, not even close to happening.
No.
It's like, but if I have like 3 birthdays all in one, type thing, no, not getting the Reebok pumps. But
yeah.
All
for me,
all the rich friends had those.
Yeah, my parents got divorced when I was 3 years old, and I basically lived with my great grandmother because my mother was off doing like 3 different jobs. She was like a hairdresser, a bartender. She worked in a slaughterhouse killing animals. She just all kinds of stuff, and then she had 8 boyfriends on the side. So I was chilling out with my grandmother, and that's how I got fat to begin with. Grams, you want to stay home from school, watch horror movies, play an Atari and television, and then here's a plate full of cookies. And she did the craziest stuff. She used to give me Captain Crunch, like a bowl of Captain Crunch. She would put the peaches or fresh fruit on it, and then she would put sugar on top of that.
Oh, wow.
Hello, overkill.
Well, back in the 80s, it was all about, low fat. Fat was horrible.
Everything was low fat. Yeah,
you couldn't low fat, high sugar. It was like it was the sugar boom, really.
Kool-Aid. Yes.
I know. I think with my kids, I try to limit it to some degree, but I'm like, man, when I was a kid, there was, all the Kool-Aid. We used to drink Kool-Aid all day long, and that was just sugar,
Yeah, absolutely. And the commercials, they were so predatory, but they were just so awesome. The commercial just sold you all of it. The Kool-Aid guy just busts through the wall. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing better. That's the pinnacle of sugar.
And you save all the Kool-Aid points, and then you
get the points.
Kool-Aid toys and stuff.
Yes. And I even tried selling those magazine. You remember the back of comic books? You'd have that club or whatever where you could get stuff, and you'd bug your neighbors, hey, you want to buy whatever the hell this is? And then I could get a candy bar in a week or a bicycle if I worked for 3 years. That type of stuff. Yeah, I tried that too.
I can get a plush toy with 10,000 points.
Plus Superman, right? Exactly. way to
So,
put it.
okay, so talk to me. You kind of cover and I love this about your channel too, is you kind of cover the full gamut of collectibles. And that's what I try to also, hit on action figures and talk about some comic books and try to, mix all of those types of things because I think nostalgia really drives a lot of that
Definitely.
stuff. So, what are you doing so we're going to talk about a lot of cards, tonight,
Mhm.
obviously, but you had mentioned before we got on, you mentioned you sent away a couple of comic books for grading. How big are you into all those other things? And are you into, I guess, what other things are you into? What other collectibles do you dabble in?
I mean, I love the whole run of it because, as a kid, spending a lot of time alone, I just took in a lot of information from whether it was cartoons, whatever was there, sports, all that kind of stuff. So to me, it all brings back a lot of good nostalgic memories, like you were saying. So I just kind of get into everything. It just depends on what falls in my lap. Like I would buy a collection of action figures, I buy comic books, I would buy pretty much anything. It's vinyl records, anything that's collectible that I think I could either enjoy having because it means something to me, or that I can flip. And honestly, flipping is its own reward. It's a lot of fun and it's enjoyable. And you get something out of it too when you get something into the hands of a collector, somebody that it means something to. So it's not just about money, it's about what it means to that individual. Because as we grow up, you see the misery that's going out there in the world. You want to get back to places that make you happy. And aside from family and what you've got going on right here, the safest place you can be is when you were a kid and you didn't know the horrors of the world. Not yet, anyway. So yeah.
Right, right. So I know that you had said you sent away a couple of comic books away
Yeah.
for grading. Which ones are you kind of focused on, or is it you just kind of like playing around with it?
Yeah, like I have a friend who flips stuff and he does a bunch of antique malls, and his big thing is antique signs, kind of like you'd see on American Pickers. And he usually comes to me with records, any comic books, cards, whatever. And he had a decent collection of comic books, and a lot of them weren't in gradable condition. But again, just whatever falls in my lap. And he had a few amazing Spider-Mans in there. And then I have another friend who does comic books pretty much all the time. So I just sent my stuff to him, and then he gave me advice on which ones would be good to grade. Kind of like comic book men, like the guy comes in with a ponytail and says, "These are the good ones. These I would just throw away." So, I had him, I knew Amazing Spider-Man 252 was a great book, but I didn't know which ones were in good enough condition to get graded. So that's why I've got those there, and I'll probably make a video with those whenever they do come back as well.
Now, outside of like the flips, do you have any, PC stuff on that front? Do you have any Incredible Hulk #1s that are worth $1 million
Oh
up there?
man, I wish, man, I wish. I actually had a copy of 181 that I got for 250 back in the day, and got
Oh,
rid of
wow.
that. It really kind of depends for me. Things are pretty much transient. My main two PCs are Bo Jackson and Don Mattingly. So as long as I have a Bo Jackson rookie or two, I have probably about 30 of them at PSA right now between his 88 football and then various 87 rookies. But yeah, Bo Jackson and Don Mattingly. Whenever I moved from Washington, I pretty much sold everything that I owned at the time, even my Bo Jackson, National Treasures, out of 10, like quad relic, autograph book. It was just, all that stuff kind of went. So for me, it's transient in a sense that as long as I have something that I can hit that nostalgia point with, I don't need to hang on to it. Because I also am into Stoic philosophy. And to me, a car gets you from point A to point B, whether it's a Ferrari or whether it's some Pinto hubcap a la Clerks. It's just metal and wheels at the end of the day. So I love this stuff. I love nostalgia. But at the end of the day, I'm okay just kind of flipping things and letting it go back into the ether.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's probably a good attitude with collectibles because usually, if you're
Yeah.
investing in collectibles, you can't hang on to it. I mean, there is that sentimental piece, which is nice, but you also
Yes.
have to be okay letting go. So that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Like I keep Pink Floyd records and I keep the first Black Sabbath record. I'll keep pretty much every copy that I ever get of that. So just very, important ones to me that means something I'll keep and try to hold on to those until I'm dead broke or something. But other than that, I'm okay with the rest just going.
What do you think about? I'm just thinking about this. I'm just going to bring it up to get your thoughts on it. But it just seems like out of all the decades that they're making movies about and or remaking movies on, the '80s
Right.
is a huge focus. The '80s is like the coolest decade. It feels
Absolutely.
like. And for you and me, for people like that are our age, those are good times for the most part. I mean, you think about just the pop culture, I guess, from the 80s. A lot of
Yeah.
there's just so much, whether it be music or TV or movies or whatever.
MTV, to start. You had MTV.
when there was actually music videos,
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
so do you think, and this is complete speculation, but 50 years from now, is that still going to be a really important decade when you're talking about collectibles, like with records or mixtapes for that matter, whether it be the 80s,
Yeah.
Milli Vanilli mixtapes, I don't know,
Milli Vanilli, I don't think I would be investing in. But I mean, I think that it's still like, if we look at what is popular these days from like the 30s and the 40s, things like movie posters, original movie posters. I mean, there's a lot that is very popular from those times. So I think that there will be a lot of stuff, but I think as time goes by, it's sort of sifted like an hourglass. Like, you have all these 80s things that people remember that were cool, and as time goes by, we're just going to sift down to the main ones, which is kind of like vintage basketball. You look at all the good basketball players back in the day, and then you just sift through them. You look at your Tracy McGrady's and all those guys, and they're essentially nothing versus, I mean, even a guy like Dominique Wilkins, his cards are just like, a tenth of everybody else's. So you just have your main items that sift through over time. So Masters of the Universe, maybe it just falls apart, over the years. Like, nobody's really thinking about color forms or shrinky dinks or spirographs or Etch-a-Sketch or any of that stuff from the 80s, or a hypercolored shirt from Genera. I mean, there's so much that just kind of gets sifted.
I think a lot about Etch-a-Sketch throughout the day.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
When I get stressed out, I just get working.
Right? Yeah, to me that's more spending time with a woman these days, but that's good. So I think that there's a lot, like the movie Rad. I mean, that just pretty much says it all right there. I loved BMX bikes as a kid. It's got a great soundtrack. That movie will be great for me forever. So I mean, there will be pieces for sure.
Yeah, if we correlate that over to sports cards, I mean, you have to believe that is really the big push on the 86 Fleer Jordan rookie. Because for the 86 Fleer, and that, for me, that's kind of that's the grail. I mean, that's my 52 Topps Mickey Mantle, and for people our age, I feel like that kind of falls within our wheelhouse as kind of that grail card, or at least it's one of them. Whereas I can totally see in 20 years, the young people at that point, this will all circle around, and maybe it'll be that Topps Chrome rookie card for LeBron.
Right.
That is that 86 Fleer. I do think that it is generational in that way, because the 52 Topps Mantle doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but for people that are my dad's age, it's a huge deal. So what are your thoughts on that, just kind of generationally speaking, and how we move forward?
I think that, there's, anytime you have a guy that's always in conversation with another guy, I mean, you've got to have somebody to compare it to. So let's say that LeBron is the GOAT forever, and people believe that LeBron is the best. Compared to who? The first person you're going to think of is Michael Jordan. So I think that when you have greatness, they're married together for the longevity of it. So even if Michael Jordan's 86 went tier 2, it's still going to be above somebody else, like a Luka or whatever, at least at this point. So I mean, you're going to have greatness just kind of tied in with other greatness, and even through the sifting of time, I doubt you're going to get Michael Jordan and LeBron James away from each other. They'll probably be buried next to each other.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're up there on the pantheon of basketball players. All right, Ziggy's got a question. Are your poker friends into sports cards? Is there crossover in the past few months? I guess, I mean, there's probably kind of that gambling, speculating, aspect of it.
I would say that a lot of my poker friends came from Magic the Gathering. That's sort of where we all sort of were a pool of Magic players who just kind of slowly got into poker as we realized that there was a lot of money to be made in poker. And I think that just they're naturally sports fans, and a lot of them are into sports cards. And there is an element of it being a game. Like I said, when I got heavily into sports cards, the first thing I did was start researching when is the market, or why is, especially during the playoff bubble when the market started going crazy. I mean, that's opportunity. When a market is bustling and it's changing prices, a card can go from $5 to $50 overnight. There's a lot of opportunity with research and just being there before other people. So to me, it was also part of that game, because when I was a kid, like I said, spent a lot of time alone. Video games were my out. So I just got really into video games, and then poker and Magic the Gathering, and it's just another game. So yeah, a lot of them are into the sports cards.
Now, do you have, of course, there's the Pokemon craze, and not necessarily that Magic is tied to Pokemon, but it's
Right.
kind of in the same. It's that non-sports card category. Do you have any interest in Pokemon or any of those other types of, games?
Well, I was an executive buyer for a long time with Magic, and I've done as much with Magic. It's been a very big part of my life from when I was 14 on. I used to basically make a living when I was homeless playing Magic and flipping the cards. So I mean, uh, Pokemon was always there, like in the passenger seat. So like at a Magic tournament, I'd be trying to buy a collection from somebody, and if they had some Pokemon or some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they would come along. So again, I think that for me, I wouldn't be monkeying around with much of Pokemon because I don't have the expertise or the knowledge of, to get an edge to be there every day. But if a Charizard comes up, if a collection of like random first edition stuff comes up, I would definitely try to acquire it and then distribute it through grading, flipping, whatever else. So I think the opportunity is there. Again, if it comes up, I'm definitely going after it. But if just like an average Pokemon collection, I'm not going to monkey around with it for the most part.
Where is and this is just out of curiosity, but Magic the Gathering, the MTG stuff, where is that stacking up these days as far as, sports, or not sports card, but card investing slash collecting? Is that still a huge, I mean, and the reason why I'm asking is because I just don't know. I mean, kind of like with the Charizard and that stuff being crazy expensive, are there also TMG cards in that same world that are graded?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've been grading for a while. See, that's the thing about Magic is that it's a game that when you're intelligent, you're going to be drawn to that sort of analytical strategy game. So the marketplace for Magic has always been very financially based because the kids that are playing also need to acquire the cards to play. So when a deck is hot in Magic, the cards go up, they're expensive, and you have to be able to trade, buy, sell, whatever to acquire those cards. So it very much has its own marketplace, and the demand for the older cards is crazy because, for instance, Alpha, there's only like 1,100 of each rare. And then for the beta, which is the most popular set because it has the regular borders, the alpha had like a rounded border. And it was just everything in Magic at that time was what looks good in your deck. So the white bordered cards were less valuable and the weird cornered card was less valuable. But there's only 3,300 or so of the beta rares, if my math's correct on that. So, I mean, when you look at the entirety, I mean, Magic has millions of players and they're turning it into an esport. They've essentially gotten rid of the live pro tour other than the Mythic Championship. I mean, I'm not completely up to date with it, but there's a lot of demand, and there's definitely a sector where people are just into buying vintage Magic, and it's very like a Black Lotus. The cheapest one you're going to get is going to be like $5,000 or something, and there is a lot of counterfeit Magic the Gathering cards as well. There's a lot they're being produced in Korea that you can get on random sites like Alibaba that kids try to like get it and then try to sell it to somebody on OfferUp. So you got to be really careful with Magic. If you're a sports card guy and you want to catch that craze, I would say do a lot of research and look at a lot of videos as to what's a real Magic card and what isn't, because there's so many counterfeits out there because it's an opportunity to prey on somebody. They think they're getting a cheap Mox and really they're just getting roasted.
Yeah, and actually, let's take this question. Ray has a good question. With Pokemon and Magic cards, should CGC be strongly considered for grading? Thoughts on this? And the reason why I brought this question in too is because you just mentioned, there's issues with counterfeiting and fakes and stuff out there. I mean, does CGC, are they able to catch those things, or do they have a good grasp on, or are they good enough fakes to where they can get by on a graded card, you think?
Well, I could tell you back in probably 2008, I mean, I had to break a kid's heart at a convention. We'd set up at Gen Con or Origins. Those are big gaming conventions, Ohio, Indiana. And a kid came up and he was really happy about the beta Mox Sapphire that he had gotten. And it was like a PSA 7 or something like that at the time. And I just had to break his heart. I was like, look, man, this is the counterfeit Mox. I don't know who they slipped it by or how, it happened, but this isn't real. And I think the same thing could happen. And as far as the grading goes, the grades are only as good as the graders. So CGC has trust when it comes to comic books, and I believe that they can gain trust when it comes to Pokemon and Magic, but there's not a lot of their graded cards on the market. And, maybe there's an opportunity there to pick up some before it becomes very popular. But I mean, they're hiring from the same pool that everybody else is hiring from. You know, PSA's hiring, whatever, BGS, all those guys, they're still in the same pool of people who will grade cards. So I mean, it really kind of depends on where they take it, and they're still hiring for sports cards. I just applied the other day just for fun. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere with CGC because they're so related to comics, but yeah, I mean, it certainly could happen, and but you still have to be careful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. What is your thoughts on, CGC kind of crossing over into sports cards? Do you think that it's, if I think of CGC and the job that they have to do now with a comic
Hmm.
book, where it's like every page has to be there. There's 30, 40 pages in a comic book. They have to
Right.
go through each page. Has it been restored? Has it, are there nicks? Are there stains?
Yes.
It just feels like the work that goes into a comic book is pretty vast,
It's crazy.
compared to what you have with a sports card, or a card, any card. I think the trickiest part of that job is probably just authenticating the card and making sure that it's real.
Right.
Because it's probably a lot easier. Well, I would assume it's a lot easier to fake a small card as opposed to a giant comic book. Like
Yeah.
it's
And it,
pretty hard to fake Incredible Hulk 181 or whatever. It's like,
right. It honestly, when you're looking at cards, whether it's sports cards, Magic, whatever, you can tell by the ink a lot of the time. You know, even if it's a Jordan reprint rookie, the ink is always blurry. It's very difficult to recreate the original ink. So if you see an original card, original comic, the reprints always have bad ink. It's very difficult. But yeah, I think that the comic book graders are probably pretty well equipped to start grading cards because, like you said, they grade one comic. It's like they graded 40 cards anyway, and they're still looking for the same things. They still have the same process. So a comic book grader could easily be taught to grade cards very quickly. And I'm confident that they could have a good service. It's again about trust. Where is it going to come from? Whenever they get their sports cards up and running, we'll see. Because I think that people will give it a shot with the current state of the Umbrella 3 or whatever. I think that people will try them. And I think as long as their price isn't going to be like $30 a card initially, like if they were open, let's say tomorrow, they say, all right, we're taking sports cards for grading, and it's going to be basically the same process that you already know. Are you interested? How many people here would be involved? I would send them 100 cards for sure.
yeah. I think the big thing is going to be, and I think that, yeah, obviously service is going to matter, customer service as far as just turnaround times and price.
Hmm.
But I mean, a lot of what drives the market now is just resale value. It's not that people love that PSA slab. It's more of like, look, I mean, PSA gives me X amount of dollars on the resale, and SGC gives me Y, or and that's what it is. I mean, for a lot of people, I'm not saying that that's everything, because I know there's a lot of people that just really love the PSA slabs. They
Right.
they really believe in the quality. I mean, there's more to it, but I mean, I think resale really drives a lot of it. I mean, if SGC was selling twice as much on the resale market as a PSA slab, I think SGC would probably have a lot more business.
Yeah.
And the market dictates it.
They're selling certainty. People want certainty. If I came to you with an elixir and I said this will cure all of your ailments 30% of the time, and it's this amount, it's $5,000, and then a guy came and said, well, I've got one that'll cure all of your ailments 85% of the time, but it's $20,000. You're going to go with certainty over uncertainty if you can. So that's what grading really does provide, is some level of certainty. And of course, there's still a bunch of subjectivity when it comes to whether a card is a 9 or a 10, and we're going to crack it out and we're going to send it into this guy and that guy, or you see a 10 with like a big ding on the bottom of it. I mean, there's just so much of that goes on that at the end of the day, even if you have that certainty, you still want to look at the card yourself. And if you're a collector and you're keeping it, if you're the end user and that card is good enough for you and it's a 9 or a 6 or whatever it is, then that's really all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's true. I just get confused with grading because I hear these, I hear stories, and I'm not a big grader. I don't, buy
Mhm.
cards and send them in. I either buy raw, sell raw, or I buy graded, sell graded.
Mhm.
But and part of it's just because I hear the stories of, I send it to one company, I got a PSA 5. I send it to another company, I get a BGS 8 or whatever. And now
Right.
with vintage cards too, you can be all over the place just depending on how they view certain things. So it's just tough, and I'm just not confident in my own abilities, and I haven't found someone local where I am where I can just say like, hey, can we check over this and I'll pay you to look
Right.
at the cards and say like, yes, gradable, not gradable. I just don't have it yet, so I'm holding until I can figure it out. But and then
Yeah.
also just turnaround times are so long now that I'm just kind of like, yeah, maybe I'll just wait.
Yeah, I don't plan on seeing cards back for 6, 7, 8, 9 a year. Say happy birthday in 5 years, whatever. This is what you go in knowing.
Yeah, Tony, E-Man, how CGC will compare to PSA on flips. Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big thing. It's pricing. Also, I've heard people online too say they are not crazy about the CGC slabs, and I really like.
I like them too. I think they look great. But we're comic book guys, we like the comic book
Yeah.
slabs. For the comic book people that also are into cards, that's why they got into Pokemon and Magic first, because it's just basically an extension of the similar type of things you find in comics, a lot of cartoon art. So it makes sense for them to go there first. They're like little comic books, and I do really like their slabs. And the beautiful thing about it is that they have all the way up to a 10, and they have a 9.5, and they give you subgrades. So I'm really excited about the potential that CGC has in grading sports cards.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And I do think that just kind of depending on what happens with PSA, there's if demand keeps on the way that it is, then prices could go up again. And it does open the door for a company like a CGC that's already established. It's not a brand new company. They already have a great reputation. They already have the infrastructure in place. They probably just need to hire in.
They need the graders.
They just need graders. But outside of the infrastructure piece, they're probably in good shape, to kind of make a splash. But we'll see. We'll see.
I would say that they have more trust than a lot of other people do in that. I mean, they could easily take. Again, big words maybe, but I'd say they could take SGC out pretty quickly if they started grading sports cards.
Yeah, that's what I want to see is how will they compete with the other. PSA is the top of the mountain. Will they knock, BGS and SGC down a notch? I'd be interested in seeing that. All right, Rick says, do you guys think all the cards being graded will drive the prices down early next year? I talk about this too because I'm a big supply and demand guy in general, and especially with collectibles because you know this too. I mean, even if you have something super super rare, there's 5 of them. Let's just say that are out there. There's going to be a price tag, but then if another 5 just show up, it's a massively different market at that point. So supply and demand, it's a huge thing. I talk about Luka Doncic, his PSA 10 base rookie card, how that pop report keeps on rising up, and I just have to assume at some point that's going to have an effect. But again, he's one of the hottest players in the NBA right now, so maybe that never happens. Maybe it just continues to hold. But if that card dropped down to $700-800, it wouldn't shock me at all, to be honest, just because of all of them that are out there. And to answer this question, it's kind of long-winded, Rick. I'm sorry, but I'm extremely curious to see what pop reports look like at the end of the year and then summer of next year, because you just have such a massive amount of cards that are being graded and just so much of a backlog there that, yeah, it's really tough to evaluate cards right now. For me, it's really tough for me to look at a card, and unless you've got a low pop, a really, really low pop on something, because I'm already kind of building into, if I'm looking at a card, I'm already building in that maybe at the end of the year, there's another couple of hundred of these, or maybe there's 500 more or whatever.
Right.
And I think that I think it's smart to look into, to kind of look at it that way, just because especially if you're going to buy a high dollar card. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I like to call it faux pop in a lot of scenarios. So like you have a population report, but that isn't necessarily a true indicator of how many of cards are out there in the market in that grade that haven't been sent in or are in the process right now. So like if you have Luka and he keeps going crazy and the desire for his cards is still there, then yeah, if you add another 500, then you're probably still looking at not really lowering the floor that much. So it really depends on the demand of the market. I mean, everything, like you said, is supply and demand. You have those two things working together. If you have an item and there's 5 of them out there in the whole world, but 0 people want it, guess what it's worth? 0. So if suddenly something came out that affected that and said, well, if you have one of these 5 things, we're going to give you free groceries for life. Suddenly everybody and their brother would want that, whatever the value of, free groceries for life would be, then those things obviously would increase in value. So I think there's a bit of a danger in putting big money into big cards like that, because you don't know what that pop report is going to look like, and you don't know what that demand is going to look like. So even if the pop report stays reasonable, then the demand comes in and it's like, well, the NBA, I'm tired of hearing about your movement, and these people don't like this, they just want to be entertained, and then you don't know. The NBA's down, and if you got the president trying to poop all over what you're doing, even if you disagree or agree with whatever he's doing, it's not good publicity. And it just, it all depends on how people feel at the end of the day. Do they feel as if they want these things still? With this pop report, you never know.
Yeah, no, think about, I mean, the most popular athlete in the 80s/90s, Michael Jordan. Think about all the limited edition Michael Jordan cards exist from the 90s.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's just so many sets. There's so many cards. So it's like even with the most popular player on the planet, I mean, you can have too much of a good thing, sometimes. So that's where I really have to, if and I'm not a big Michael Jordan collector, but if I was going to dig into kind of those 90s inserts, I would definitely I would need some help there. I would go to people that know what they're doing, just because there's just so much that was printed. And I guess that's why a lot of those more rare 90s inserts are very valuable.
Yeah, like I would start, if I was trying to research those things, I would start with eye appeal and scarcity, because when you have eye appeal, I mean, that's why you're interested in something other than, hey, that's Michael Jordan. I mean, you don't want just like a piece of his shoelace and nothing else. You want to look and be visually stimulated. So I really like the 1993 Beam Team cards. I know a lot of people are into the original 92, but I think that the 93 Beam Team is probably the best Beam Team that they made. And those Jordans are still, they're still like 70 or 80 bucks raw, and they're very difficult to grade. But yeah, that if you guys are looking for a nice insert from back then, 93 Beam Team is very attractive.
We've got a hot take from Hockey 99. Since CGC is so big in comics, will they have the capacity to take over the grading world and be the leader? I don't see why not. Now, one thing I will say, I was watching a great show that I watch, excuse me, and actually his show is coming on at 10. Sports Cards Live, Jeremy runs that show, and it's fantastic. I love his channel. But the one thing he was talking about, I caught it in an episode, couple episodes back, or maybe it was the last one. But what he was saying is at the national convention every year, the Sports Card National, years ago, 5, 7, 10 years ago, there was a lot of SGC graded cards, a lot, to where like there was just as many SGC cards as there were PSA, and then it just slowly over time kind of stopped to where there wasn't as many SGC, and then you had.
Right.
PSA. I've also heard stories about when, Beckett got into grading in the early 2000s, where people were popping PSA cards out of PSA 10 cases and sending them away to BGS, to get graded. So, and I guess my main point with saying that is just because PSA is what it is right this second does not necessarily give them, it doesn't mean that they're going to be that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Definitely not.
I don't think it hurts to kind of diversify a little bit with your grading companies, have some BGS, have some SGC. I've got some of all of them. And the same goes for CGC, especially if they build a decent reputation on that front, which I just can't imagine that they're going to flippantly get into sports cards and, without having a plan in place.
Yeah, most of the time when we're getting information from companies, they already have the next 6 months already planned out, especially if they're a public company, because they have to deal with investors and they have to have projections and how much they're going to make, and they have to have a plan. So oftentimes when the general public is getting the information, it's already, thought of months and months in advance.
Dex Flow. Dustin, look into CGC graded Sports Illustrated. I've never even heard of this. I didn't know that magazine.
Oh, yeah, they grade those. Mad magazines, Playboys, they'll grade any kind of magazine you're interested in.
I did not know that. I once owned a first LeBron cover sale for 1.8K, CGC 9.8. That's really interesting. Thanks, Dex. Yeah, we'll look into that. I did not know that was a thing, so I'll have to check that out. And I've heard of movie posters too.
Movie posters are awesome.
Movie posters, which is pretty cool.
I've come across a few collections of those doing the flipping, and man, I'll tell you what, we have gotten some very nice, and there are a lot of expensive movie posters out there. We happened upon a guy who had an original Wizard of Oz poster, and I didn't know how much it was worth. I just knew it was great, and he was selling a bunch of other stuff, Beanie Babies, golf clubs, and in this one room he had this Wizard of Oz poster, and we were just getting into posters, and I knew that it was good, didn't know how good. Offered him $50 for it. He was more worried about the value of the frame. Ended up being $1,000 poster.
Wow.
Yeah, so especially vintage movie posters, there's a big market. I mean, I bought from a friend of mine who used to be in the movie industry. He has a big collection. His wife does licensing, for a lot of the companies out in LA. And he was selling horror movie posters because I really love horror movies. And here's another collectible tip for you guys. Horror stuff always sells. If you have horror VHS, horror, everything under the sun is very collectible. The people that are into like metal music and horror, they're really into it. So if you like, I had a Fright Night original poster and it sold for $300. We paid 20 for it. Very good deal for us. And you want to look for the rolled posters, not the folded ones. There's more value in the ones that are just rolled.
Okay, and that's just raw. That's not graded or anything.
Just raw. No grading of posters. There's no poster grading.
Interesting.
Yeah, okay. You can get it linen backed. You can pay a lot to have it linen backed, which basically makes it way more sturdy, and it will get rid of some of the problems with it. It's like restoration essentially, but that really jacks up the price because it's a couple $100 or more a poster to do that.
Got it. Okay. Classic Pack Attack says, "Hey 777, I saw your video on Ben DiNucci. I think I'm saying that right. As a local Cowboy fan, I bought into him before the season, and the moment Dak went down, I got a few more before the sudden spike. LOL. Is he the? I'm sorry, I missed. Is he the backup quarterback other than Dan?
It's him and Dalton. And I went and bought DiNucci because the only Dalton rookies I saw were like $15 or $20 already. And I'm to quote PSA collector, I'm a low-hanging fruit type of a guy. And if Dalton is old and stinky and he screws it up, I mean, even if he's not, he's going to get some backup from DiNucci. And as soon as DiNucci does anything awesome, his Donruss card can go from $2 to $20 overnight. So I didn't really see a big deal picking up a rack of them for $3 a piece or something. I like small investments like that you can just flip. You don't need to send them in for grading. And who knows, maybe he's a great long-term play.
Yeah, I will say though, be careful with QBs. I'm still holding on my Mason Rudolph and my Ryan Finley careers. So
yeah, you got to know when to hit the eject button.
Cautionary tale. Well, the sad part is like Mason Rudolph actually got in. He got into play last year, and I held. I'm like, it's the Mason Rudolph era. Roethlisberger is out. Out. This is the new. He's Mahomes 2.0.
Right.
I know.
And he ended up being a red-nosed reindeer.
Yeah,
or not lacking a red nose, perhaps.
It was not good. So, okay, Ty Drake, what are your thoughts on current state of the basketball market? Seems like almost everyone is waiting for the perfect time to buy. I made a video on this actually tonight. There was one that dropped maybe like an hour ago, but and I mentioned this because this is going to go down as one of those moments where I'm looking at prices now, and I probably should be buying a lot of stuff, but I'm not. I'm holding. I'm buying here and there, but I'm being very picky. And it reminds me of middle of March 15th to March 25th, where I was being very picky. I did pick up some things and got some good deals, etc. But, that was obviously a great time to buy was in March. However, part of me is thinking, now, was that just kind of what was going on in the world? And we got the spike, is the same thing going to happen? We talked about this before we went on the air with the holidays.
Right. Yeah.
We were, logically, you would think that the holidays mixed with a basketball season that's about to start back up again gives you some sort of a boost in November, December timeframe, maybe January as well. What are your overall thoughts on the basketball market?
I think that to a lot of people, there doesn't seem to be a clear play. Like, I think football isn't necessarily panning out the way that a lot of people thought that it might, with it, popping day to day. We're seeing a couple people here and there, but they miss having that day to day, daily variance, so to speak, in basketball. And I think a lot of people are preparing for the future, which is basically next season. But I think there are a few other catalysts that you can kind of pick up on. And I made a video today about one of those being the free agency market. And I think, again, it's just called shop, but Montrezl Harrell is in a pretty good spot to get a contract somewhere, or at least sign a big contract with the Clippers, depending on what's going on behind the scenes there, where Kawhi's going and whatever else. So I think that looking for those nooks and those crannies, instead of buying into overhyped rookies that might still be good long-term plays, but we might also just be paying too much for. Because again, I've said it so many times, I think that basketball is going to be good when it starts, but I don't think it's going to be as crazy as it was, because not as much is on the line at the beginning of the season as during the playoffs. And as far as what we were talking about for the holidays, there's, again, this is just more like a human psychology thing, but what are we prevented from doing part of this season or this year because of COVID? What can't we do?
Travel,
right. So then when you traveled to see family, what did you bring them?
Presents.
Presents, lots of them, right? So then, since you can't travel, some people have probably already got, their travel funds set aside or whatever. But since you can't travel to see the people that you love and you're going to miss and want to be with them, people are going to be looking for gifts that mean something, not just like, yo, here's some underpants and socks that match, unless that's what they're really into. Maybe they are, but they're going to be looking for gifts that mean something to that person. And if you know a diehard Cowboys fan, it doesn't matter if Dak is injured or not, and they love Dak Prescott since the dawn of time, chances are a person that cares about them, there's a percentage that they're going to buy that and send it to them. So I think that we might see a lot of stimulation for the collectible market simply because people can't travel to be with their loved ones.
Yeah. Now, I guess on the flip side of that, do you think that there will be less money in cards because people are buying gifts for their little ones as opposed to spending money on cards or their wife or whatever? Not my wife. My wife is
I think that there
understands that.
There's definitely going to be an element of that for sure. But I would say that in the card market, there's so much money at the mid and the top end of it that the people that can afford that type of stuff anyway, who can go and buy retail boxes for 800, I mean, I don't know how much they're actually spending on their wife and their kids, but I'm assuming they might actually dwarf that amount with what they're spending on cards. Who knows? And if you can't see your buddies, I mean, I definitely think that there will be some pullback from that. But then again, maybe there isn't. It depends. It might not be enough to stop the oil, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, Alec at Global Sports Card Investor, he's asking, what are your thoughts on motorsport cards? Formula One has a new release coming out in a couple of days. I did a video on NASCAR cards because there's a new release coming out, or maybe it just did come out, a new NASCAR release, and that was just something I was looking into because I'm curious. It's like that with as well as wrestling cards. I've heard of wrestling cards, 80s wrestling cards being very popular. Right. And I was just curious, like, what about wrestling cards now? Are thoughts on that? And, are those still popular? Are you into any of the racing stuff, any of the racing cards, and do you know anything about their long-term popularity? I mean, was there Dale Earnhardt rookie cards that were big, back in the day? I just don't remember.
They definitely tried to make the NASCAR racing car thing happen a while ago. And the problem with NASCAR, even though it's basically, other than football, America's favorite sport to watch, the cards have never taken on. I mean, if you look, and it's as dead as hockey. If you look up Google Trends since 2004 and you look up every sport, every type, racing cards, basketball cards, all that type of stuff, the line for hockey, flat across the board. The line for racing cards, flat. I mean, whether it's NASCAR, whatever, it's flat. So, I mean, if something was going to happen there, you might have seen a jump when Michael Jordan got involved, and he's got whatever I forgot, Bubba something or other. What's that guy's driver? You must know, Global Sports Card Investor. What's that guy's name? But I think that you could have seen something then. I just think that America's not interested in racing cards for the most part, for whatever reason. They're not interested in hockey, and they're not interested in racing.
Well, and that's kind of my, when I'm playing devil's advocate, when we talk about global sports, and it's like, oh, well, it's got a global following. I do understand the global following piece, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's buying cards of a player just because,
right.
There's X amount of fans in Asia or whatever. And then the other part of that is the most important. I mean, if you look at most popular sports globally, soccer is number one, and
right.
Soccer cards just finally got some sort of hobby love in the last 3-4 months. And that's the number one most popular global sport. And I saw some stat that a vast majority of the money going into soccer cards is in the United States. So it's not as if
right.
globally there's all this money being spent on soccer cards. And then the number two sport, most popular sport in the world, is cricket. So maybe we should all be dumping money into cricket stickers. I looked on eBay and I saw that, cricket stickers are like, $1. I have no idea who these players are, but it's just, I don't know if I buy into the global popularity thing. I get the logic behind it. I understand the logic, but really where I'm paying attention to is, where's the U.S. spending money? Where are the U.S. consumers spending money? And I know that there's a lot of Asian buyers of basketball cards in Asia, and I know it's happening. I'm not saying that it's not. It absolutely is. But I don't know if it's how much of a data point is that? I guess that's one data point in many.
I think that in America, they want to capture excitement. So basketball cards are exciting. It's action. It's an action-based game. I mean, when you're watching NASCAR, and no offense to anybody who's into it, you're literally watching a car go around in a circle. If they had NASCAR cards where they just it was just the destruction. Like if this was the accident, you know, they just had accident NASCAR cards, they'd probably be more popular. Sadly enough, America loves excitement and action.
All right, Ty is following up. Do you believe that we are still in the beginning stages, and in 3 to 5 years, rappers and athletes will all be in the hobby, making it way bigger, similar to the shoe market today? I feel like this is kind of, you know, I've heard I've heard definitely people talking about this. I don't know. I do understand kind of the logic of, is this going to take the place or take part of the place of fine art? If you look at the art world, it's a $60 billion a year industry. It's massive. The you know, art. Now, can sports memorabilia and sports cards, or and then include Pokemon, include Magic and all that stuff, can that take a piece of that pie over the next 10, 20, 30 years? I definitely think that it can. I definitely think that those younger generations, are they going to be more likely to buy, you know, Andy Warhol painting, you know, or are they going to buy a Michael Jordan rookie card or a LeBron James rookie card? I can see how society shifts into more of these types of collectibles over time, as opposed to, you know, spending money on other things. But, you know, there's a lot out there. There's, you know, collectible cars, there's watches, Rolexes. And I don't think that people are going to stop buying watches, you
No,
know, as time goes on. So I don't, that's tough for me to say. What do you think, Chris?
I think that when we're talking about you know, cards and collectibles becoming part of a design, it makes sense theoretically, but you have to think about who's doing the designing and how much space it gets. So if you're a bachelor dude, right, then you can design your whole shit and you can have all the cards you want everywhere. But if you're a man with a wife and you have a kid and a family, is she going to let you put LeBron in every room? Like art, even if you're rich, you know, art is still going to be all over the place, and then you can have your shit in the garage or the man cave. So it really just kind of depends. And I think that there's enough that you're going to still have some of that, but I don't think it's going to ever take over art or things of design nature.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, I mean, I think it'll take a piece of that pie, but there's just a lot of,
Yes.
and then you could also maybe make the case for sports memorabilia. Will people be buying, you know, the signed helmets and the jerseys and the, you know,
Right. Yeah.
because you could also fill your man cave with those sorts of things. And people do that.
Absolutely.
People do that. So I guess if you're lumping in all of sports memorabilia, including cards, then certainly, certainly.
Yeah, it all depends on how you want to design it and what you're into. And even then, we can throw our LeBron Wheaties boxes in there that we got on offer up for 20 bucks a piece.
That's right. Wheaties boxes. I wish I'd hung on to those Jordan Wheaties boxes from back in the day, man.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I was looking at that, I know that Brad was into them. I know that he was, you know, he's made a video, he's big up on the Wheaties box. And I'm not so sure. I think it's cool in theory, but when I was looking around, I saw only a couple of those Jordan boxes really sold for very much money, and they were full, you know, and most of them are going to be empty. And then you have to think about how many people are buying them all across America, and then how many people traditionally have wanted those over time. And we don't see a lot. I mean, there's people that have so many. They used to be in every card shop. I mean, the Wheaties box was like penultimate back in the day, but I don't think that's one of those that have kind of sifted through, in my opinion. You know, we talk about all the things kind of sifting over time. I think the sports box, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong and maybe LeBron hammers it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. All right, Roy Jones is asking, he says, Chris mentions that hockey is flat compared to NASCAR. What about big rookies like Mario Lemieux, Yzerman, and especially Gretzky? And I'll take this one first, just because I think if we're talking about all sports cards, it does seem like even when where prices are slumping, the high-end stuff doesn't necessarily slump that much. You know, we're still
No.
seeing record sales for the high-end stuff. And I
Yeah.
see that continuing. And so for hockey, I think you can make the assessment that the big time cards like the Wayne Gretzky 79 top, you know, the OPC 79 rookie card, there's only two PSA 10s of that card in existence. So that's a seven-figure card, or you know,
Right.
it's a high six-figure, seven-figure card. And I think that one sold for 400 grand or something, you know, over the last couple of years, but there's two of them, you know, I mean, there's just none of them
That's
out there.
crazy.
You know, so I think that if you're talking, and Mario Lemieux, again, if you look at the pop report, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that Lemieux rookie card, very, very rare cards. I don't
Yes.
know about Yzerman, but but yeah, I think if you're talking about the goats, the goats of a sport, and Lemieux and Gretzky, I'm not a hockey guy, so I know I'm gonna get blasted by my hockey friends.
Mhm.
But the one thing I know about Lemieux is that he was injured a lot throughout his career, and Gretzky played a few hundred more games than Lemieux did. So there's all sorts of arguments. Gretzky is the greatest. He's the GOAT. There's no doubt. But Lemieux is one of those guys where if he had just been a little bit more durable, maybe he could have been more in that conversation. From what I know about hockey, take that with a grain of salt. What are your thoughts, Chris?
I think it all just boils down to supply and demand again. And I think that it really matters where the demand is coming from. So take a card like vintage baseball cards are obviously very rare in a high grade. Like even Eddie Murray's 1978 rookie card, that video that I made the other day, it's just like it's under 100 or something on the pop count, right? It's very, very low. And that sells for like 18,000. And then a PSA 9 that sells for like 700, and there's like 3,000 of them. And the reason why there's such a big disparity there is because the people that want the 10 have the money to spend. So when you get those big spenders battling to get that piece that means enough to them to buy it, but they don't care about the 9. So there's enough demand for the 9 to hit 7 or 800. It's a minty fresh Eddie Murray. He's awesome, but the guys that want that 10, they have enough money to battle each other for them, and they don't care about the 9 at all. So once you get to the 9, the demand drops off severely from people that have big money. So it really depends on what type of investors you have, what type of buyers for that specific grade.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, what do you think of 90s high-end insert Jordan and Kobe? I don't see many selling on eBay. So, Henry, what I've heard about, my understanding of this hobby when it comes to very, very rare high-end stuff is that you won't ever see them on eBay, or extremely rarely will you see them on eBay. They probably go to a heritage auction house or
Yeah.
a high-end auction house, or it might just be through word of mouth that that the collector, because they're so rare, the collector that has it through kind of through your network. You find out who has it, and then you kind of bug them over time, and maybe they sell it to you. But a lot of these guys, from what I've heard, and I don't know, it's not that I know all these people personally or anything, but from what I've heard, that they really want to buy and hold forever. Like it's something that it is like a piece of
Right.
fine art for them. It might be, maybe they bought it for 50 grand and now it's worth 500, but they're not interested in selling it. And I think that maybe with the market as hot as it's been over the last 12 months, it's brought some of these cards out of the woodwork because it has reached a certain dollar amount where they're like, you know
Hmm.
what? $1 million is a lot of money. Maybe I'll take that $1 million, or whatever. So, but from what I understand with a lot of these cards, they're not going to, you're probably going to have to really do networking, through kind of the hobby folks, and to find certain cards if you have a certain card that you have in mind. What do you know
It's
about
difficult.
this, Chris?
It's very difficult to find high grade cards raw. And whenever you have product that's that old, people are just going to overcharge. I mean, not necessarily overcharge, but the market is going to pay a lot to have the excitement and the opportunity to open up that product, to get that card, to get it graded. It's like fun. It's like Easter egg hunting for rich people. So I mean, if you buy a $3, $5, $8,000 box trying to find a card that might be worth 40,000 or whatever, I mean, it's probably not plus EV over time, but they're going to do it at least that once. So getting those, it's very difficult. And the other thing is that when people are sending cards in for grading, they realize what they're doing. I could stumble upon a guy at a garage sale who doesn't know he has $1,000 worth of records and he wants 50 bucks for him and doesn't care. But you're not going to find a guy who's got a bunch of high-end graded Jordans and Kobe's that doesn't know what they are. Even if he wants less than average, because he has to sell them for whatever reason, you're still not going to stumble on this stuff very easily. And like you said, to your point, people just prefer other avenues of selling them rather than on eBay.
Absolutely. All right, Tony Eman, the lady that created eBay because she was a huge Pez dispenser collector. I did not know that.
That's awesome. I didn't either.
That's really funny. Yeah, man, eBay, that kind of just, the sports card market and all the majority of the sales, that just kind of fell in their lap. I mean, if you think about all
Hmm.
the different places. Now, granted, I know that eBay is a huge online auction house, one of the biggest ones, but man, it just kind of took over on eBay. It's funny because typically you buy on Amazon, you buy all these different places, but I've never bought a sports card on Amazon, which you'd think is kind of strange. You'd think that maybe there would be something there. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I used to sell Pokemon cards by the lot on Amazon. The thing about Amazon is that they have very intricate rules and like nooks and crannies that you have to work with, and they're very buyer oriented. I mean, eBay is too, don't get me wrong. They protect the buyer a bit more than they protect the seller. But on Amazon, you know, it's a little bit weird. They have very specific things that you kind of have to follow, and it's more annoying. But yeah, Amazon is definitely selling cards, but if you got a card and you didn't like the condition of it, you could definitely send it back. So I wouldn't fear buying cards on Amazon. I think it just happens less, and you're more likely to see a price that's way out of this world. Because when I see cards, let's say you got like a PSA 8 John Stockton rookie card from '88 Fleer. You find that on eBay anywhere from like 35 to 70 bucks or whatever. And then you go to Amazon and there might be a dude trying to hit you for like the PSA 9 price. He wants 280 for it. You know, he's just shooting the moon. I don't know what he's doing.
All right, Ben Clark is asking when Panini loses exclusivity, not if, but when. Hot take from Ben. Do you think they will stop making so many sets per year? I'll say first off, you know, this is kind of the double-edged sword that Panini is playing with, just like with Topps. You know, it's like you're either printing more of one set to make more profit, or you're printing more sets and less cards of that set to make more profit. So it's like, you know, on the one hand, yeah, it's annoying that they're printing a million sets of basketball and a million sets. At the same time, though, I definitely don't want them to go back to 1990, you know, where they printed, you know, a zillion of one set where I could get it. Now, granted, you know, you could get it anywhere. All the, you know, the lines at Target and Walmart would not exist. You know, they didn't exist in 1990. It was, you know, it was very available. Packs of cards were very, very available. So I struggle with this one because it's like, you know, unless they just decide that they're not going to take more profit. But if I'm the CEO of Panini, you know, and it's my job to figure out how to make more profit, this is probably the only way that they're going to be able to do that effectively to please their kind of, you know, stakeholders as far as making more money. So from a business standpoint, I understand why they're doing it. But from a collector standpoint / investor standpoint, I also see why it's annoying to people. So what are your thoughts on this, Chris?
I think it's difficult in general. I think that there's a lot of trashy product out there that's going to hurt people in the long term. I get the excitement of opening product, but when we're seeing retail, you know, blasters being bought for 20 of, you know, just garbage products that are now reselling to somebody for 60 or 80, I mean, the long-term value of those cards is not going to really work out. I mean, think about how many candy bars come out and then disappear. You walk into a candy store, there's 3,000 to choose from. All you want is your Reese's Pieces, and then you're out the door. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for, like, say, Chronicles. I don't like Chronicles. I think it's kind of garbagey. There's like 18,000 different variations of cards. They're all like $4, even for like a Tyler Harrow rookie when his, you know, Prism's going for 90, his, you know, Chronicles is going for 450. So I also think that it's going to be difficult because Topps is definitely going to want back into the basketball market. So when that comes up, if I were Panini, I would be schmoozing everybody. I'd be whining, I'd be dining. I mean, it would be all out war to try to get that exclusivity back on the table for Panini. Because if they lose it, think about Topps. They used to be just the absolute god of cards for so long. Now Panini has taken over in a sense that they own all of those companies, the Fleers and the Don Russell of the world. They have all of it. But when Topps comes back in, they're not messing around. You know what I mean? Topps will definitely go for the throat. And it'll be interesting to see.
You know, and actually, I just thought about this, and maybe I probably should have thought about this sooner, but the whole licensing agreement that let's just use the NBA as an example with Panini. You know, maybe, you know, to play devil's advocate here, I don't know what the profit share is with the NBA, but I assume that there's a share there. I mean, the NBA is getting a portion of whatever Panini is making to have that license. I'm assuming that to be the case, or else what's in it for the NBA and the NFL and the NBA players? So I mean, that's added pressure to keep the license too, I would think. If you're Panini, it's like, hey, we got to make more money. You know, we've got to figure out how to make sure that the NBA is profiting properly and their players, you know, so that we can keep this license. Whereas Topps might be coming in with their proposal of like, hey, we can do this or that or whatever. You know, that's just something I hadn't thought about it until right this second. But, you know, that's got to be an added pressure on these companies, whether it be Topps with MLB or Panini with the NBA.
But I think that it really benefits the NBA to have that competition, because if you have one person who's just going to force feed you X percentage, and then you just say, all right, well, we're going to just remove you from this nipple, and then we're going to open up 3 or 4 more for you guys to all feed from, I think that they end up with more market coverage, and they end up with a better product for the customer. Because instead of dealing with trash like Chronicles, we can go, Prism is our favorite, we really like Select, and then Topps, instead of 2009 hitting us with those blue Bowman. And I mean, honestly, the 2009 Topps set is a beautiful basketball card set. I want to see what Topps can do. So I think the competition would just be way better than just Panini.
I totally agree. I don't think it's a good idea to open the floodgates to every company to come in and be licensed and whatever, kind of like what it used to be back in the day. But totally agree that I don't think it's hard to have a collision course between Topps and Panini and let them battle it out, and whichever sets are most popular. I mean, yeah, it would absolutely help pricing, for hobby boxes if you have the choice between, Top Chrome basketball and Prism, and Prism basketball. I don't think it hurts, certainly to have competition. That's capitalism,
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. And actually, I'll put Ziggy's comment here. He says we should want competition in lobby for both Topps and Panini, and I agree. They both do great work. So why not put them against each other and let them have a dual license and both be licensed? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's rough long term when you have cards that don't have the licensing. You look at the Prism baseball cards or whatever, and it's like, wow, that's an awesome looking card. It's amazing looking. I love this card, but I just where's the logo, dude?
I thought that too with Optic Holo baseball. I was like, man, look at these Optic Holo baseball cards.
They're gorgeous. Yeah, I like them.
And nobody wants them. Like, there's PSA 10s for nothing. And I'm like,
exactly.
It's crazy. All right. Dwayne Tomka is asking, are you guys on the soccer card craze? It really is the most popular sport with the younger generation. Maybe it actually does take off in the U.S. Okay, so I'm going to just say this, and I'm just totally I'm thinking it, and I'm just going to throw it out there. The U.S. now, the women are dominant in soccer for us. Our U.S. women's team completely dominant, but our men's team just cannot figure out how to get over the hump. And I feel like if there was like a Ronaldo or a Messi from the U.S. that could really generate some excitement around U.S. soccer, then I think that would have an effect on soccer cards. I think it might.
Wasn't that dude American? What's his name? I'm not a soccer guy, so what's it?
That one guy?
Postolinic or Pusilage or Putrid?
I'm not going to say his name right, but it's like Christian Pulisic.
Yeah.
Help me out. That's not his name, but I'm on the right track.
Yeah, that guy. I thought he was American.
Yeah. Well, no, there is one very good American player that is, but he plays in Premier League, I believe. So yeah, to answer the question, I don't have a lot of soccer knowledge. My sisters and my sister-in-laws are very, very Pulisic. Yes. Thank you, Ben. I do have family. All the women in my family are big into soccer coaches, college soccer coaches, etc. And they're trying to train me up on Premier League. So I'm in research mode. I have bought some soccer cards, but I am nowhere near an expert on soccer cards. I always refer off to other friends of mine for soccer cards. Do I think it's going to take off in the U.S.? I don't know about soccer cards in the U.S. I just don't know. I know it's been big in the last 6 to 9 months, but I'm not sold on it yet. I think I would have to see a little bit of longevity. I'd have to see like what a next year's sets look like, just to see if it's got I think it's got potential for sure. But I just don't know. I don't have a great answer. What do you think, Chris? Are you following soccer? What's your take on soccer cards?
I'm not following it, and only because of the same trickle down effect as we have between grading or just card type in general. I don't have enough brain span to cover all of the sports. And when soccer is going crazy and day to day cards are popping from 5 to 500, I'm in on doing some research and trying to capitalize on that. But, I don't really have too much of an interest in soccer cards from I want to keep this perspective. So if it looks crazy and it looks juicy, I'm all about trying to capitalize and get a taste of that pie. But, I'm not a man who wants to keep the whipped cream on the side.
Yeah, I like how you put that. What about now? Here's an obvious question. What about New Kids on the Block cards from the early '90s? I'm glad you brought this up, Hockey '99, because I 90% of my collection is New Kids, and then I've got a few basketball cards and a football card laying around. No, you know, I haven't collected any. I didn't even know that there was New Kids on the Block cards. I knew there was New Kids on the Block everything else though, because I just remember when I was a kid, it seemed like every last little thing was. I'm sure there's also NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and all that stuff. It just felt like they printed cards. I remember there was Who Framed Roger Rabbit cards. There was,
there you go.
Anything that there was literally a card for everything, back in the 90s. So that's what makes 90s cards. They're fun to look back on, and like Family Matters cards, Steve Urkel cards. It's fun to have those for collecting purposes. But I don't. If you're trying to like make money off of them, I'm probably not going to go that route.
Yeah, I would say overproduction. You look back at like the Music Stars cards, rap cards, Yo MTV, whatever. All that stuff is just overproduced versus, because back in those days, the MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice, that was right at that time where they came out with those fancy new wave looking cards, and they just shoved them down everybody's throat. So even if you had a subset of people who wanted them, you probably couldn't get more than $60 for a PSA 10 of one of them. So would it be a cool gift or whatever? Sure. But is there good value? No. If you could pick it up for 20 cents and guarantee that it's a 10, because you're probably not going to sell the 9s or the 8s. So yeah, I would say that there's an overproduction. And like you said, every wax pack of every type, if it was a TV show, the Dukes of Hazzard, Elvis, whatever it was, all had a card, and it was mostly done by Topps. If you're looking for something like that, Garbage Pail Kids is where I would be. Garbage Pail Kids are awesome.
Yeah. I was watching a show, and it was a collector's type show, but someone had Cabbage Patch dolls, like 200 Cabbage Patch dolls in their room.
Oh yeah.
And they used to talk to them and stuff. It was a little odd, but you know what? Everyone's got their thing. I talk to my cards sometimes, Sometimes I get lonely and I'm talking to cards. Hey,
we bought a big collection of Cabbage Patch Kids a few months ago. We ended up paying like $8 a piece, still in the box, and sold most of them for $70, $80 a piece on eBay. There's a big market, and there's people in the Facebook groups. If you want to learn more about specialization in a certain market, go find a Facebook group and hang out in there, because they literally are looking for the freckles and where it was developed and what kind of hair it has and what the face shape is like. The people that are really into Cabbage Patch are into it just as hardcore as people are grading sports cards.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and I know that's right. It's like, and I think that's like a nostalgia driven thing where, as kids, you look at it and it's something that just reminds you of your childhood, good times in your childhood. All right. Ty Drake is asking, do you see PSA 9s as good long-term investments? Example, LeBron Topps rookie PSA 10 is around $4,500, where a 9 is around $1,300. Pop is within $1,000 of each other. Is it worth the extra to get a PSA 10? For me, I think that these are case by case basis is what I mean. It just depends. It really just depends on how you feel about a certain player, certain card. I really like PSA 9s, and they're right in my price point a lot of times, especially if I'm looking at like 80s. I don't know, a lot of people wouldn't say 80s football cards are vintage, but I'm talking about, like, for example, 84 Topps football cards. Let's just use that as an example. The PSA 9s are literally about 10% of the price of a PSA 10. Now, PSA 10s are very rare, and that's the reason why. If you're looking at like a Dan Marino rookie card, PSA 10,
oh God, yeah,
it might be $3,000, let's just say, roughly, whereas the PSA 9's $300.
Right.
So you have, if just for the price point, the 9 can get you there, and for a card that's 36 years old, from 84, a PSA 9, that's pretty. You're not going to find too many raw cards out there that are going to get a 9, in my opinion. Now, maybe there are, but I just think they're tough grades after 36 years. Even if you've kept them, if you feel like you've kept them in great shape, it's just time wears.
Absolutely. I've got a PSA 9 LeBron in my eBay store right now for sale. And that was really interesting, where everybody was holding their LeBrons and just waiting for him to win the championship. And they thought that they were going to put it on the market and the demand was going to just take the price all the way up. But the problem is that everybody already knew he was going to win. There was no backslide. There was not like he was up against Kawhi. He wasn't up against a worthy. I'm not saying that the Heat aren't a worthy competitor, but going into Game 6, everyone just expected So what, the most likely outcome for the common person who was going to buy that card on an emotional, oh, he won, I can't believe it, what a hard fought game. It didn't happen. They were blowing them out. People were done. They were listing into people who already stopped caring because they realized that, hey, he's just going to win. So that was an interesting.
Yeah, the one card that is interesting to me that I was looking at today is Anthony Davis's 2012 Prism rookie card in a PSA 10, and I was just following that pricing because that was a card that it went all the way up in August to about $3,600, and then it came all the way back down to about $2,000, and then literally like yesterday, they're up there for 1,500, 1,700, 1,800 bucks. There wasn't really even a bump after they won, which it surprised me a little bit because LeBron's winning his fourth. AD though is winning his first, and he's a young guy. If you're kind of like, if you're speculating on that younger player that's got more years, maybe he's that next Lakers, that next big guy in LA, once LeBron leaves. And that rookie card really hasn't moved that much, which was surprising. Now, I know that I made an analogy earlier, too, about Patrick Mahomes. That kind of happened where Mahomes won the Super Bowl, prices drop a little bit, and then a couple months later, they rocketed up when the market went hot. But I guess, was that just a function of the market getting hot in April, May, and that's why Mahomes kind of shot up like that? Or is it like, do you see that happening with AD LeBron where 2 months from now, you get that same spike, where it's like basketball season's coming back. We're getting excited for it. What are your thoughts with those two players?
I mean, I think anytime you have additional interest, you're going to see a short-term spike, even if it's just for a week or something, while people get acclimated to basketball coming back. I think there's a little bit something a little bit deeper with Anthony Davis, and I think that there's less confidence in him than there is in somebody like obviously LeBron. But he's been in the league since 2012. It's not like he's a 2016 rookie. He's a 2012 rookie, and he's been in the league. He's never gotten there on his own. He's never been the guy leading the team. So all the people saying that he's doing this, he's doing that, maybe that's the case. And maybe he's now at a turning point and he's had the experience and LeBron has mentored him to the point where he can be the man after LeBron leaves. But I think that it's a good long-term card. I think that the floor on it is probably somewhere over 1,000, 12, 14, something like that. Depends on, of course, what happens with NBA interest. But he's going to have to do something without LeBron. And if he goes with LeBron again next year, that's fine. I mean, you're probably still going to see an increase as you get closer to the playoffs during the season. But for him, long term, he's really going to have to show that he can be the one that leads the team and not just with LeBron in the wing. And maybe LeBron was the guy that mentored him and got him there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he definitely played great throughout the playoffs.
He did. He's a very good three-point shooter these days. That's one thing that impresses me.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, what can he do? Can he lead a team on his own? Because in New Orleans, he couldn't do that. He wasn't. Now, granted, he didn't have the help. He didn't have any help in New Orleans. But it's not as if he really put the team on his back. And I mean, we haven't seen that yet. But will he develop into that guy? He's still really young. What is he? 27, 28?
Yeah, I think he lacks confidence in himself. When you hear him talk, he's just kind of like at a loss sometimes. And even when you had that one video where he was like, it's my time to be the leader now or whatever. Like, okay, show us that you have that confidence. Show us that you can be the general rather than the guy clicking the button in the tank. You know what I mean? So he's got to come out and have that. I'm the guy. I'm the LeBron, and that's what it is. And when he does that, his cards are probably going to be better off for it. And can I just speak very briefly about the eBay API and that managed payments that you were talking about, Ziggy? I've been on managed payments for a while, and it's not very good. The first problem that you have is that, over the weekend, they don't process payments. So all the money that you get over the weekend, you're not going to get. And then they're going to start processing the payments on Monday. But the problem with that is that they don't process all of them at once. They process them through the day. So you might get a payment for $80 if you sold 500 or 600 over the weekend. You're not going to see it until Tuesday or Wednesday. And then your bank might take another 3 or 4 days. So when you're getting paid, you could literally be a week and a half behind. Now, normally, you get most everything by Wednesday from the weekend, but nonetheless, it's not how it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Now, do you think, is that something that you think they'll tighten up? Is that just like, hey, we're rolling this out and it's just kind of, it is what it is right now, but do you think over a few months it'll be, quicker, faster? I don't know.
I think that eBay is going to get away with whatever they can, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that they've got
until they lose business, I guess.
Right. Well, the reason why they did it is because they were sick of PayPal taking their market share. So now they charge you 30 cents instead of PayPal. Now they've increased their fees, so they're essentially giving you around a 1% off throughout the entirety of the process for waiting for those payments. But for me, I mean, if I sell a LeBron rookie tonight, I want that ability to go and buy like a Julius Erving, Bird rookie if I see that pop up on the marketplace. So I don't really like to have to wait. But I'm an instant access type of the guy. So for me, it's quite annoying. And I'm not sure if they're going to change it until something forces them to change it. And they don't even have everybody on. It's not for every low or mid-tier type of a seller. They're just slowly moving people into it as they're higher volume. So, for me, I'm not a fan of it. And I hope that they do change it, but I'm not expecting much because it's eBay.
Yeah, I mean, do you honestly think that they'll lose market share from it? I mean, do you think that it'll cause people to say like, hey, if I have to wait 10 days to get my money, I may as well try out some of these other platforms, or maybe I mean, do you think that could happen?
I think that people will dabble, but it's just like taking a wrong turn somewhere. It's like if eBay is getting you the most money, it's like PSA. I'm going to wait that 8 months rather than send it for 4 months and get half of the return on investment. So if eBay is the top dog and he's getting you the most money, then you're just going to have to deal with him until some other person comes along that can provide you with a better service. So yeah, it kind of sucks, but it is what it is. That's why you got to have a bankroll.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that's a really good point on the flip side of it. Even if you're not, it's not even necessarily even if you're looking to buy another card to flip to then flip again. I mean,
Right.
A lot of times it's kind of like what you said. Actually, it's a perfect example of where, you sell the LeBron, you're going to buy the Dr. J and you're going to hold that Dr. J for, years or whatever. It's like, but you still need that money to be able to pull it off.
Right, because somebody else, they might just come in and buy it immediately. You never know.
Yeah, it's definitely going to slow. That's interesting because it definitely slows down efficiency for sure for eBay. I don't know, between all the the issues with them favoring buyers over sellers and the managed payments. I think it's going to put some strain on. We'll see. We'll have to follow that and see if that's going to be a long-term problem, or if people just live with it, learn to live with it.
In eBay's defense, I'll say that for the most part, they've generally been okay. Their customer service is sloppy because they've outsourced it. And, it feels kind of like a ghost town, like the people that are up at the top are taking the biggest cuts of everything. And then there's so many bugs with the program. Sometimes you'll be in the middle of making a listing and it just won't work anymore. And you'll have to go back and resume and do all this nonsense. And then sometimes you'll be trying to click switch it from lowest price to buy it now. And then it just won't work. I mean, there's so many bugs on eBay. They've just, they don't care. They're sloppy because they're the top and they don't have to be cleaner. Yeah. It's just what it is. You either deal with their kitchen or you eat somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. All right, guys, we are about an hour and 22 minutes in. I think we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. I'm actually getting really tired. I love the conversation. Chris is an awesome guest, and I hope that I can have him back on again because I've learned a lot, dude. And like I said, I watch every single video that you put out. So I'm gonna continue on. But let me know if there's any last second questions. I will throw them up on the screen here. Let's see. Any modest cards? Yeah. So people are basically saying, ComC is an option for sure. ComC's got their own issues, though. I know with shipping out. All right. Thank you for joining us, S Fleming 701. Oh, I got 64 people on, man. Nice job. We have Chris on more often. Sports Card Live is on. See you there. Hey, yeah, thanks for stopping by, Ziggy. We appreciate it.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't been over there yet, I don't think.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah. For those two, if you haven't heard of Sports Cards Live with Jeremy, he runs the show. It's excellent show. All right, guys, we are going to sign off. Thank you again, Chris, for joining me, and we'll definitely we'll have to do, and I do the same thing with like Brad, and some of the other guys. I like to do these every 3-4 weeks. I think it's awesome just to touch base and hang out for a little bit outside of just the regular workday.
I'm in, man. I love it. I had a great time. It's awesome. I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out, and hopefully you'll go check out my YouTube channel as well.
Absolutely. Chris is at VegasFinds777. If you didn't catch that earlier, VegasFinds777. All right. Have a good night, guys. We'll talk to you
Have a
later.
good one, folks.